We're going to get into identity now, and that simplicity and how that works with identity is really an important part of what you're doing with your brand. And a simple mark that your identity is going to have a huge impact in how you connect with your customers and how it's applied to all touch points. So what makes a good logo or a good mark? What makes it effective? And I just want to take you through a list that we develop here when we're working with clients of all the things that we want them to consider as we're building their mark. And then after this, we're going to take you through 4 or 5 examples and case studies of marks that we've developed for my brands, and then marks that we have developed for other brands. And we're going to show you how those have been developed and how they're used across multiple touch points. So what really does make a logo effective, your mark effective? And I want you to think about these here. It needs to inspire a feeling of connection to your customer and to your team. And we've talked about connection a lot, but that mark, that connection really needs to be something that you're thinking about as you're developing that. And is it easy to remember? And that connection and being able to remember that, you'll see as we get into these case studies that it's important. And is that mark a reflection of your culture and your brand and what you stand for? And as we go through the case study on identifying words that relate to your brand, that in a lot of cases, these words that are identifying points for your brand are really going to help you with building your mark. And having those points of distinction that are easy to remember. I think that the most effective logos, that they're a reflection of your personality, the reflection of who you are. And that's also hard to explain, which is why we're going to take you through these case studies. But simplicity is such an important part of identity, because it does have to be timeless and not this sterile thing that you're seeing right now where companies are basically just converting into the 3 fonts that we all know that are very simple, and you're seeing brands that have been around for a while that had really impressive heritage logos. And sometimes you need to evolve and make your logo modern, but now you're looking at logos from a lot of companies that are just word marks out of very similar fonts, and if you were to put them all on a wall, they all start to look the same. There's no connection that's around that. So simplicity is critical, but that means timeless. It doesn't mean sterile, and it doesn't mean generic. And as you're thinking about all these touch points, that is that mark going to work in black and white, or as a gradient? Is that going to work in the colors that you've identified on different backgrounds? So it has to be effective across all of those touch points when you're using it in black and white or in color. And that when this applies to your photography and to your film, and we really go deep into photography and film in this workshop, but if the photography needs to be effective, where it can stand on its own, and we're going to show you examples with a couple of companies here where we've been able to take the marks and have a mark that's systematic and be able to use that through photography, then everything starts to become connected in how you approach that. And it's interesting with branding and the perception of what branding means right now. And when you talk to a lot of people, what does branding mean? And a lot of people just think it's your logo. And back to sum of all parts, your mark, your identity, is incredibly important. It's one of your most important assets that you're going to have. It's a reflection of your brand, but it's not your brand. And that what brand unification means versus branding is it's built around the sum of all parts. Everything has to be connected. So when you're thinking about your identity, it's no different, that your identity has to be a reflection of all these different elements that we're talking about. And that means that it's got to be clean, built around simplicity. It has to be inviting, but it has to be timeless. And what you don't want to have to do down the road is keep making modifications to your logo. And that's a mistake that I see all the time. Some of the best logos that are out there from some of the best firms that specialize in identity, some of these were done back in the 60s and they still look relevant today. And when you're working with identity too, that there's obviously a huge difference in scale that you see from designers that are younger and then design firms that are charging a lot of money to do that work. I can tell you from experience that building identities and marks is not easy. It really does take a long time to do it. And that when you're looking at some of these platforms, when you can go online, they send you back 2 or 3 logos next day. Are they going through that process of really understanding all the things that we just went through? Are they taking the time to get 10 or 12 words or 4 or 5 words out of you that what does your brand stand for and how do you take that back to your mark? So this process that we're getting now into on identity, this is incredibly important. We put it in simplicity because I think that it needs to be built around simplicity. So we're going to jump into 4 or 5 brands here that I think you'll find really interesting. Some from scratch, a company that we worked with starting back in March that I was following on YouTube and really felt connected to, and we ended up working together. And I think when I take you through that case study, you'll see exactly how a mark is developed, what the process looks like, and then what that looks like as a finished product, and what that looks like across all touch points. And then I'll also share with you success that we've seen with this company that's only been around now for a few months.